Tonight on 24 Hours, Boeing, Jets and Jobs. The largest maker of airplanes in the world, cutting their workforce, changing the way they do business. From pink slips to better days, tonight on 24 Hours, Boeing, Jets and Jobs.
Good evening and welcome to 24 Hours. I'm David Curley. Mention the name Boeing and the world knows you are talking about jets. No company builds more airliners. Mention the name Boeing in Western Washington and people know you're talking jobs. The aerospace company is the largest private employer here. But in the next few weeks, at least 5,000 workers will be laid off or retired. Workers who helped build Boeing will find themselves passing around resumes. For many, only one company name will appear on that resume, Boeing. More on that painful transition from reporter Julie Blacklow in a moment. But first, this area has been through layoffs before. The bad news this time is that the jobs lost probably won't ever come back. Boeing is changing its culture, the way it does business, and you are part of the reason why. With great fanfare, Boeing unveiled its newest jetliner. But flying with the 777 is a new way of doing business for the world's largest jet maker. It's a complete cultural change, a painful evolution for Boeing, referred to in the past as the lazy bee.
They used to throw manpower at every problem. Half the time it worked and half the time it didn't.
Robert Serling wrote about Boeing's legend and legacy. Part of that legacy is a company that realized in the late 80s that it wasted much more money than it made. A company compartmentalized between divisions and geography.
This turfdom was hurting them, that they were turning down great ideas just because it wasn't thought up in Seattle. And this is deadly to a company.
To stay alive, Boeing was forced to change. At the same time, its industry was also undergoing a massive revolution, led by you. Airline passengers, the ultimate user of Boeing jets, started speaking with their wallets.
The consumer is not willing to pay a substantial amount of money for its ticket. It's searching for the lowest price.
Harry Lair has been in the airline business for nearly 3 decades. When he started, airlines were regulated. The government set fares. So Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, and Lockheed raced each other to produce the fastest, most innovative jet. Not necessarily the cheapest jet.
They were all dealing in essentially the same environment so that they were able to pass everything along to the airlines, and the airlines were able to pass everything along to their customers.
But with deregulation, war broke out. Fare wars. With increasing costs for jets, air carriers bled billions in red ink. 184 airlines have gone bankrupt since 1978. The message to Boeing from airlines, including Alaska Air, has been persistent.
We've said that prices have to go down and that it's not particularly our problem how it happens, but you can't have them keep going up.
Prices are so high, Boeing has found itself competing against its own planes, jets from bankrupt airlines which sit idle on desert sands. It's cheaper to refurbish some of those than buy a new multi-million-dollar jet. But the real competition comes from across the Atlantic. Airbus, the consortium of government-backed companies in France, Germany, Britain, and Spain, is coming after Boeing. Subsidized by those governments, Airbus lost millions over the past 2 decades trying to gain market share.
The Airbus prices have undercut Boeing, but I know it cost Boeing a lot of sales. And it did give Airbus a chance to invade the U.S. market and take over a tremendous percentage of it.
A percentage gain mostly at McDonnell Douglas's expense. But late last year, Airbus set its sights at 50% of worldwide sales, which would cut into Boeing's portion of the pie. As one Boeing worker put it recently, it is war.
They have a goal of 50%, but we have a goal of keeping from getting that too.
Competitors and customers' demands have resulted in a new mantra at Boeing: cut prices, costs, the time it takes to build jets. It means changing the way Boeing does business.
It is no easy task. It's a very important one. Breaking down barriers between organizations in any big company like ours is difficult, but each time it happens, it's been very, very positive.
The layoffs have grabbed our attention, but for years Boeing has been trying to change, to cut waste, improve the bottom line, and level out employment. Mike James with more on Boeing's effort to reinvent itself. Mike?
Hello, David. Boeing's commitment to change, to shaking up the whole concept of building jet aircraft, actually goes back to a series of shocks in the 1980s at the peak of the company's success. The first shock was an internal survey showing that sheer waste cost the company $2.5 billion in 1988. That's 5 times the company's profits for that year. The second shock came from a favorite Boeing customer, United Airlines. United had sold a bundle of seats on Pacific flights based on deliveries of the Boeing 747-400, an upgrade of the original jumbo jet. But Boeing couldn't make the deadlines, and key systems on the new planes didn't work properly. Sean Griffin, Tacoma News Tribune aerospace writer.
It wasn't a disaster unless you were a customer of Boeing. Unless you were United Airlines and you had sold 6 months' worth of seats from San Francisco to Hawaii and found out that Boeing wasn't going to have the planes ready in time and you didn't have any planes to put those in.
That embarrassed the company and forced Boeing to rethink the manufacturing culture inside the plants. Customers like United insisted on it. They wanted a seat at the planning table for the next aircraft to make sure the 747 nightmare never repeated itself. Well, that forced a break with the old Boeing style developed in the days before deregulation, before the fare wars, when production costs hardly mattered. Tex Bullion, one-time Boeing executive.
When we started building up on the 707 and the 737s, we started hiring people by the ton. And we got them in there. That was just a judgment on our parts. But after we got going, we found out we didn't need that. No, we had people walking up the aisles.
Even now, the old ways dominate a lot of production lines. Take, for example, building a wing flap.
Somebody's got to design it. So he sits down and designs it. And most of the time they were he's. Designs it, tosses it over the wall. Somebody's got to make a tool for it. So he sees the part, designs a tool for it. Somebody's got to produce the tool for it. So he throws it at a wall to the next person. And they design a tool for it, gets thrown over a wall, and the tool gets made, and it gets, finally, at some point, it gets down to the shop floor and finds out that it can't quite be made the way that it's all been designed.
Aghast, that's the word the company's CEO used at these cumbersome techniques, Boeing reinvented itself during development of the 777. Instead of mock-ups, the company used advanced computers to create a paperless design for the plane, the first Boeing jet without blueprints. On the 777, Boeing developed for the first time a common database for parts. Most important, the company broke down the walls and brought in the airlines, the shop workers, the mechanics and engineers to work on one design and build team. Boeing finally decided you need the assembly workers at the table. You need the people who make the tools and the people who design the plane. And you also need to bring in the buyers so somebody can say, taking a look at the computer model instead of a big mock-up, it won't work if you build it that way. It paid off. The old over-the-wall system produced error rates of about 35%, and with them a whole workaround system to fix the mistakes. The rework rate on the 777 is less than 1%.
Yes, I'm very impressed with what Boeing's been able to accomplish. I mean, keep in mind this is a very large company in a very complicated business. And what they have achieved so far in terms of improving the efficiency, I think is very impressive.
The toughest sell for Boeing is with its own employees, to transfer the lessons from the 777 to every other production line, to change the habits of nearly 100,000 workers.
There are 70,000 people in Washington alone who have to learn a new way of doing things. It's an enormous education project for Boeing and an enormous communications project. I'm not sure it's going to be wholly possible to bring it all off.
But even internal change won't do it all. Boeing also needs a healthy airline industry. If the airlines keep losing money, no one can make planes cheap enough.
And then they have to also talk to the airlines that say that, tell them, you're going to have to make profits. You're going to have to charge enough on your fares to make profits.
You confident this is all going to work out?
It's going to be a while.
Coming up, Julie Blacklow's conversation with one Boeing family trying to cope with the threat of a coming layoff. Next on 24 Hours. Welcome back to 24 Hours. Almost all of us know at least one Boeing worker ready to make a big transition. Many will take early retirement, saving some of the jobs of the 5,000 workers who have been told they will be laid off. Julie Blacklow spent some time with one family that is hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. Julie?
Boeing managers have been asked to cut and then look harder to cut even more. This time, they looked and found one Mr. Rick Ferris and family. On a Sunday, Rick Ferris brings 5 of his 6 children back from church. Karen and the week-old baby stayed home this day. They've known since February that Rick was likely to lose his job.
It would be nice to actually cut the ties and be done and not have to worry about a layoff again, and hopefully get with a good company that will be secure. And
when you're a family of 8 people with a net income of $2,600 a month and a mortgage which consumes half of that, you are already living lean.
That will be used for the roast beef sandwiches.
The Ferrises are trying now to be even more careful.
hopefully stocking up on foods in case there may be a time there will be no paycheck, that hopefully we will at least be able to eat. We have tried to cut out maybe non-essentials. We haven't been big spenders on clothes in the first place, and luckily are able to pass down the majority of the clothes. Luckily, our eldest son just started a paper route, and being 12, he is the one who asked for clothes more than the rest, so he is making his own little income and will be spending it on clothes and things that he feels are necessary.
There is more than clothes on young Clay's mind. Being 12 is tough enough in the best of circumstances.
They said that he got a warning notice and that they were talking about job possibilities, and they said that that he probably was going to get laid off, because I don't want to move and have to make all my new friends again and stuff, and so it just felt like different, because usually I felt like it was secure sitting, just being able to be in this house and not have to move or anything.
He's worried about whether we'll have a home that's going to be able to fit us all in anymore. But we have a lot of support from my family and Karen's family and from our church organization.
In an average week, the Ferrises spend about $100 to feed their family of 8. This trip is a quick midweek fill-in. Karen Ferris has been trying to cut back.
So I've got my coupons in here, and I do pay attention to what's on sale here usually. May's quickly approaching, and so far I don't see a change in our budget.
Hey, you gonna turn down there for you?
If necessary, she says she will go on public assistance.
I don't think my pride is too much that it would hurt. I think whatever it takes to feed these children is probably as a mother's concern. Make sure the children are fed and don't go hungry every day. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You spend what you can and what you make, and like I said, we don't eat too extravagantly, so that helps.
The Sunday meal is indeed a simple one. Beef sandwiches, cut up vegetables, and milk. Nothing fancy or formal here, but an ever-present feeling of love and support, spiritual sustenance.
It's probably not going to be easy, but if it comes down to the point where the 28th of April comes along and I still don't have employment, I think we'll be able to last for a while, and I know as a family we can support one another, and that's not going to pay the bills, but I think we'll be able to work things out. They're getting rid of somebody who can still contribute to that company.
Rick Ferris has already received a job offer. It is from Boeing, but it's in another state and it's not the same job he has. So now he faces another dilemma. Should he move his family? Does he dare turn down the job? He has not yet made a decision. You don't have to work at Boeing to worry about your job. Many small businesses are already feeling the fallout. The money Boeing workers used to spend is shrinking with the layoffs. The ripple effect, coming up on 24 Hours.
Still looking good.
It affects everybody, yeah. And it's real sad to know that they're going to go when you've known them for so long.
You're talking one of the largest employers, and I think it affects everybody. It's a trickle-down effect, without a question.
So here at Kenny's Auto Rebuild, you could feel it?
Without a question, yeah.
About 20% of my clientele is going, what if you? Because a lot of the clients call and say, well, they lay me off, I cannot have my nails done. So,
really?
Yes. So we have to say, I'm sorry. Just, and he said, when we come back to work, we go back to your business again.
So without work, they can't afford to be beautiful?
No, you cannot afford to do the nails. I don't know if they can afford to eat. Why are they going to have the nails done, you know?
So this is all extra stuff for them?
Yes.
But not for you?
Not for me.
Welcome back to 24 Hours. We introduced you to Rick Ferris and his family. What does his impending layoff mean to you? Take a look at the money his family won't be spending in our economy. Nearly $5,000 at the local grocery store each year. $1,800 for utilities, electricity, and telephone. $300 at the local department store for clothing. And $240 for entertainment, movies, or a Mariners game. Economists say every Boeing job supports 3 other jobs in our economy. So what happens at Boeing will undoubtedly touch you somehow. Glenn Pascal is a local economist.
Boeing supports the equivalent of 17,000 small businesses in our region. So when 7,000 workers get laid off, multiply that almost by 3 to get the total impact of people who work in restaurants, people who sell houses, people who work in gas stations, clothing stores, right down the line. And it does have a big ripple effect because the impact is the spending of those paychecks. It's not so much direct purchase of things by the company.
The national economy has been growing, and now we're talking about a soft landing. But for our local economy here in Washington State, we haven't really been growing, have we, because of Boeing?
We've been growing very slowly. We would have been growing at a very nice rate because of the high-tech sector on the east side and a lot of other parts of our economy. But their dynamism has exactly been balanced out by Boeing's decline, so the numbers have just about zeroed out. We've had very slow growth.
Has Boeing been forced to do this? If they had not done and changed the culture, the way they do business, would they have survived?
Boeing can make a pretty good case it was forced to do what it did. mostly because airlines cannot afford planes at today's prices. And Boeing has dramatic targets for reducing the time it takes to build a plane and to turn the whole cycle around to give the customer a more affordable airplane in return for us getting more affordable ticket prices. That's probably the real bottom line.
So even though these are very difficult times, the long-term picture for Boeing is fairly bright.
Well, you really have three scenarios. One is the good old days with lots of jobs for lots of people, and that was a very attractive system, and it generated a lot of personal income that kept our economy going. The second scenario would be an uncompetitive Boeing that tried to do things the old way and went out of business or had huge chunks of market share taken by Airbus, which has announced that it wants half of the world market. Right now it only has about 30%. That would all come at Boeing's expense. That's not a very attractive scenario. The third is for Boeing to be world-class competitive, leaner, more efficient, and that's the direction that it's taken. In some ways less attractive than the good old days because there's not as much money in Boeing pay envelopes in that scenario, but a lot more attractive than number two, where Boeing declines dramatically and the amount of economic oomph that they give our economy would really nosedive.
Glenn Pascal, thank you. When we come back, a final word on Boeing and a look ahead to our next 24 hours. Welcome back to 24 Hours. It is being called Pink Friday. In 12 days, thousands of Boeing workers will learn whether they will join the ranks of the unemployed. As we've shown you tonight, it is painful medicine for all of us. But if the analysts, economists, and Boeing executives are right, the prognosis is excellent for a more stable, more competitive company that will serve this economy well into the next century. We'll continue to give you complete coverage of the Boeing story on News Channel 7. That is 24 Hours for tonight. Next week, 24 Hours at Nordstrom. What has made this Northwest family business one of the most successful retailing stories in the world? That's next week at 6 o'clock. I'm David Curley. Thanks for joining us. Good night.